Knoxville, Tennessee is one of the best places to live in the United States, but it's not for everybody. Here are 5 things you need to know before moving to Knoxville in 2024. My name is Cole Lyles. I'm a Knoxville realtor. I'm with the local real estate team at Realty Executives. What I'd love for you to do is like and subscribe so that you can get videos like this sent directly to you anytime they're posted. I'm all about helping people move to Knoxville, but there are a couple things you need to know before you move here if you're gonna make the most of your move. Quick disclaimer, there's probably a lot more than 5 things you need to know, but here are 5 things that I believe are important for people who are moving either from out of state or out of our market, who are maybe not familiar with Knoxville and some of the specific things that makes Knoxville such an interesting place to live. The first thing you need to know is that the cost of living in Knoxville is relatively low for now. So why do I say that? 1, goods and services are actually fairly cheap in Knoxville. Depending on the estimator you're looking at, I saw one that said that Knoxville was 15% lower than the national average, another that said it was 13%. Compared to the state of Tennessee, we're closer to 3 to 5% cheaper than the cost of living. So even within the context of Tennessee, which is already a low cost of living state, we are on the better side of that cost of living. Why is that? Why is Knoxville so cheap to live in? 1, Tennessee doesn't have a state income tax, which has been very helpful for people keeping most of their paycheck in their pockets. 2, property taxes are relatively low around here, especially if you live out in the county or some of the exterior parts of the Knoxville metropolitan area. Those taxes are not going to be as high. And of course, there are drawbacks to that. You're not gonna have as many support services. You're gonna pay more for things like ambulance and garbage and just some of the different things that come with that. But overall, the cost of living is still relatively cheap in East Tennessee. Now, we did see a pretty dramatic spike in the cost of our housing after the pandemic, and I believe that is a correction. Check out this chart. This chart shows the median home prices, both in Knoxville and in the USA at large. And you can see where we had this steady climb in median home prices when it came to the entire United States after the recession, but before the pandemic boom. Things were steadily climbing, but we didn't see that in Knoxville. We saw things stayed relatively steady. And then when the pandemic happened and interest rates hit these record lows and home prices began shooting up, I believe that was because we had a ton of inbound migration during the pandemic. A lot of people moved here to get close to nature. It's a great place to work remotely. Here in East Tennessee, we have great infrastructure. You're close to a ton of great things. I'll talk about that in a minute. And people moved here, and that caused this rapid upward pressure on our housing prices. So I believe this was a correction. I believe we're going to start to see Knoxville just stay more in line with what's happening nationally, more so than what we've seen in the past. So the median home price in Knoxville has risen pretty dramatically over the last couple of years, but I contend that's a correction, and it's going to be more in line with what we see on a national housing scale. So the cost of living in Knoxville is pretty low. It's fairly cheap to live here. That's the first thing you need to know about moving to Knoxville in 2024. Number 2, if you move to Knoxville in 2024, you're not gonna be the only one. We have a ton of people moving to Knoxville right now. How do we know that? Well, U-Haul puts out its list of one-way van rentals every year, and Knoxville's consistently in the top 10 of places where people are renting a U-Haul, bringing it here and dropping it off here, which implies that they're moving. We are also, I believe, number 8 in terms of inbound migration for people moving, according to the National Association of Realtors in 2023. So we have had a ton of new people live here. And if you talk to locals around here, you're gonna hear that too. Like there's a ton of people moving from places like Illinois, Florida, New York City, California, like Arizona. There's people who are coming from these massive outbound migration states, and they're moving here to Knoxville and to East Tennessee. One of the other ways we know that is because in 2023, we had more deaths than births, and yet our population grew. Why is that? Because people are moving here in droves. People love living in East Tennessee. I love living here. I'm a transplant. I moved here from Middle Tennessee about 15 years ago, and I decided to lay down roots here and to live here and to start a family here. I love it here. That's why I like helping people move here, because it's amazing. You're close to everything. You're 45 minutes from the Great Smoky Mountains. You're 3 hours from a ton of other different major metropolitan areas like Asheville, Nashville, Atlanta. and you're 8 hours from just about everything on the eastern seaboard. I can be to the beach or to Washington, D.C., all within an 8-hour drive, give or take, depending on traffic. I love the convenience of living in Knoxville, Tennessee, both locally and when we like to travel and go places and go on vacation. Now, I will admit, not everybody's happy about the rapid migration we've had, the rapid inbound migration. I've seen some people who, someone will post on Facebook saying, hey, what part of Knoxville should I look in? And I'll see someone else say, oh, you should try Kentucky. It's a great place to live. Because people feel this sense that we're being crowded by people who are moving from out of town. But the truth is that inbound migration still represents a relatively low percentage of our overall home sales over the last couple of years. So while we do have a ton of new people, most of the purchasing and the selling, most of the buying and selling happening locally is happening with locals. The second thing you need to know is that if you move to Knoxville, you're not going to be alone. The third thing you need to know, and this is especially important if you're moving from somewhere like California or Florida, is that we have all 4 seasons here. What do I mean by that? Why would I say we have all 4 seasons? Doesn't everywhere have all 4 seasons? Not really. So Knoxville has the full breadth of summer, fall, winter, and spring. We feel all of the temperature changes, all of the various weather patterns that you might associate with those seasons. They happen in full force in Knoxville. Let me explain what I mean. So right now, I'm filming this in mid-July of 2024, and the high this week is 98 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hot. I mean, it's very hot. It's also very humid. So it's not just hot, it's also muggy, and the air feels thick, and the bugs are out in droves. There are so many bugs in Knoxville. It's very hot. And someone from Florida might, feel this and say, well, this feels like home. Although we can't run to the beach, we have to run to the river instead, which is great. I love the river. But in wintertime, in this past winter, December of 23, we had a blizzard that shut our city down for like a week. I mean, it was 8 or 9 inches of snow, if I recall correctly. I'm not a weatherman, so don't hold me to that. But what I do know is that there was snow in the 6 months prior to us having 98-degree weather, and we have felt every temperature in between that. Now, one of the benefits of Knoxville is that we live inside of a valley. We live in the Tennessee River Valley, so it creates this basin, this bowl almost, that protects us from a lot of major storm systems that come through. So we're not getting, tornadoes for the most part. We have had some tornado damage in the past couple of years, but that is an extremely rare occurrence in Knoxville. That's not something that happens very often. What we do have because of that is allergies. We have more pollen than any city should have. We're consistently ranked one of the worst cities in the United States for pollen and for allergies. I mean, if you're very sensitive to that, Knoxville may not be the place for you. It may be worth coming to stay here for, a couple of weeks if you can afford it, if you can make that work. Come check out Knoxville. Come stay here for a bit and see what it does. I had a friend who moved here from Arizona back when I went to the University of Tennessee, who was not able to stay here past college because of the effect the air had on her. She would lose her voice most of the days, and she struggled to breathe. I mean, it was tough. So she had to go back to a place where the air was a little bit clearer, a little less full of pollen and bugs and things like that. And it was hotter, but it wasn't quite as full of allergies. So if you're particularly sensitive to allergies, you may want to check that out. Or if you're not interested in experiencing all 4 seasons, if you can't stand the cold or you really struggle when it's hot, the good news is that only lasts for about 3 or 4 months. On either side of the spectrum. Our springs and our falls here are amazing. The spring is incredible. We have the Dogwood Arts Festival and all the dogwoods bloom. We have all these beautiful flowers and there's a whole art festival downtown about it. And it's just an amazing springtime here in Knoxville. And then in fall, we have football, which is great. And I'll talk about why that's important here in just a second. But the fall is amazing as it starts to cool down. You'll still get some random hot days, but for the most part, sweater weather kicks in and it's awesome. So Knoxville has all 4 seasons. I love that. I've never lived anywhere that didn't have all 4 seasons, and I can't imagine it. So if you like a little bit of variety in your weather, Knoxville's the place to be. The fourth thing you need to know is that Knoxville is home to the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. Why is that important? Why do you need to know that there's a state university in Knoxville? There's a couple of reasons. One, the University of Tennessee is a major economic driver. They bring people from all over the world to come take jobs here, and students come from all over the world and live here for 4 years, and they contribute and they do all these incredible things, all this research. They partner with places like Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and they have the UT Medical Center, and like what they do in our community is not a small thing. I mean, there's 30 or 40,000 people there. If you count faculty and staff, I think it's probably closer to 40 or 50,000 people who call Knoxville home because of their affiliation with the University of Tennessee, and that's no small thing. They also have an impact on the housing market. Students come and they rent, and most of the time they'll rent, or their parents will help them purchase a place for them to live for the 4 years while they're here. And so there's been a ton of development trying to create student housing, and housing that's appropriate for students, so that locals also have a place to live. You know what I mean? So there is always going to be this tension of supply and demand, and the university is a huge driver of housing demand. The other reason why it's important to know that Knoxville is the home of the University of Tennessee is because sports are a big deal here. If you are not familiar with college sports and you choose to move to Knoxville, you will become familiar with college sports. For instance, the volunteer baseball team won the College World Series here in 2024, and we had a parade that I think most of the city came to. They packed out Gay Street. There was, there was orange for miles. The color orange is going to be a big deal around here. Our basketball team is routinely in the NCAA championship tournament, and our football team, it always feels like 98. Our football team is always getting better and better. Even when they're not, we like to believe they're getting better. But during the fall, Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, if you go to church and you're in these places, all you're going to hear people talking about is UT football. So you need to make sure you don't have to like football, you don't have to enjoy it, but it will be worth it to keep up with it, because the University of Tennessee is smack dab in the middle of Knoxville, and these people bleed orange, myself included. I'm an alumni of the University of Tennessee. I love it here. Some of the biggest businesses in Knoxville started at UT and came out of UT. So we have a great relationship with the University of Tennessee, and it is a major force inside the city. So it's important for you to understand that before you move here, if you're not familiar with some of the dynamics that a college town might bring. The fifth thing you need to know before you move to Knoxville is that Knoxville has one of the best maker scenes, I believe, in the country. What do I mean by makers? I mean people who make things that lets them make a living doing what they love. So there are people who make things like jewelry, who make things like pottery, who make things like, woodwork. There are people who make things like that and make all sorts of stuff, and they make a living doing it. Or they make, maybe a portion of their income comes from that. And Knoxville is home to the Maker City Summit. We also have the Mayor's Maker Council, which is a citywide initiative of makers who come together. The Maker City has all of these things for makers: resources, meetups, information. They bring in speakers. They bring in all of this stuff to help you be successful in making something that you love and making a living doing it. And I've been involved with the Maker City Summit in years past. It's one of my favorite events that Knoxville puts on. It's always a huge party. So if you make stuff, or you want to make stuff, or you want to be the kind of person who, works with your hands or create something that people want to be a part of, Knoxville might be a great place for you. It is an incredibly collaborative place to live. People here work together to help other people succeed. And I'm sure there are exceptions to the things I'm talking about, right? Like, no city is perfect. No city is going to get this down. But what I do know is this: I, as both a maker and as someone who tries to support makers, have never felt more welcome anywhere else. Anytime I've approached even direct competitors, because before I was in real estate, I was in the video space. So I was making videos, I was doing video work. I would approach people who in a lot of markets would be considered my direct competitors, and we would find ways to collaborate and work together. And a lot of that is because Knoxville has fostered this very cool collaborative space where people who like to make stuff can make it together. We even have maker spaces dedicated to it. We have places like Able Trade, we have Knox Makers, we have really cool places where you can show up, rent things that you need, you can get help from experts, and you can try your hand at some things that you may not otherwise be able to try. In fact, it's not just me saying this. Etsy recognized Knoxville as one of its first maker cities because Knoxville is an amazing place for people who make things. Knoxville's had a ton of nicknames over the years. We've been called Marble City, Scruffy City, and one of the nicknames that's recently stuck has been the Maker City, because if you make stuff, Knoxville is a great place to live. So those are 5 things you need to know before moving to Knoxville in 2024, and I am certain I've missed some things. If I did, jump in the comments, let me know what I missed. I'm happy to include a follow-up video because there's a ton more than 5 things you need to know, but you gotta start somewhere, right? There's no sense in me talking for an hour and a half because who wants to listen to that? But if you're ready to make a move to Knoxville, if you like what I've been saying, get in the link in my description, set up a time for us to chat. I would love to help you make the move. Even if you're thinking about it for the future, we don't have to rush it. I'd love to jump on a call, introduce myself, learn about what you need, and learn how I can help you make the move to Knoxville in 2024. I believe Knoxville, Tennessee is a great place to live, and I would love to help you make it your home. If you're ready to make the move, set up a time with me at the link in my description. Let's chat. And if you like this video and you want to see more, be sure to hit the subscribe button. I post videos twice a week about all things Knoxville, property tours, community tours, and we would love to have you be a part of the journey. So hit subscribe, and until next time, thanks for watching.